Critcast, where the team behind CritFacts talks about trans things and other things. Today I am accompanied by Rachel, and we are
Yes.
going to talk about metal music.
Yeah. Or just music in general, I guess. I don't know how far we can get with just metal, but hey, it's worth a shot, I guess.
So, to begin, so I checked out your band yesterday as
Yay.
part of my MWE series, and I must say I really did enjoy the album.
Thank you.
Uh,
Yeah, that means that's Dust of Obscure Devastation, I think.
yes, that was the one that I was able to find.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad you enjoyed it. It's that album was took more than 4 years off of my life, if you can believe that.
And it really reminded me a lot of Fear Factory, but like more dance, I guess.
More dance.
I say that as a good thing. I say that as a good thing.
I mean, I have nothing against like dance music in general. I'm actually quite an omnivore when it comes to different types of music.
Now, in my case, I'm more specifically into metal, but I do enjoy some other genres as well. So, do you want to talk at all about that album or about your band?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I can ramble about that. Yeah, like I said, it took more than 4 years of my life, and that was definitely a labor of love. We Dust of Obscure Devastation went through just a lot of turmoil, and at the end, like after a year of the release, the singer had to leave the band due to like different there's just different preferences and just lots of miscommunications. We just had to say goodbye, I guess. And there was just a lot of strain in general because especially if you're working in like a creative team like that, and things and the communication doesn't go all too well, then yeah, that can cause a lot of strain and a lot of stress just in general. But I do think the end result was worth it. It is like if I look back at it, I think I've said this on my own stream when Anthony mentioned it. But when I look back at it, the one thing that I think is I think I could have done a little bit better on was like just the fact that there is maybe a little bit too much variety on the album. Like it you know what I mean? It does get a little bit, you know, like I do think there's like a lot packed into that one album, and I think for like a musician like myself, and you know, just like a general like musical omnivore like myself, I think that's very exciting. But I don't think every listener will have that same experience. So I think just making it just a little bit more consistent would have been would have made it appeal more to like, I don't know, like a general audience.
Now,
Yeah.
I did enjoy the album, and yeah, I can kind of relate to that issue of an album potentially being too varied. Because although I've not formally released anything, I've recorded a few different demos, and one of the problems I find cropping up is that all the songs sound very different. And
Yeah.
it's like, well, on the one hand, I like showing off the variety of songs that I can come up with, but also listeners, I do worry about whether they like that. Although,
Exactly.
again, since
Yeah.
I haven't formally released anything, it's like on some level I'm less concerned with what listeners want to hear because, well,
Yeah.
not that many people are going to be listening to it regardless.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
that's the way I feel about my own stuff.
Well, I think in my case, I think the more technical stuff can get really out of hand. Like for me, when I'm writing music, it can get um, like I always like to spice it up, and just to make it a little bit more interesting to play. And it usually involves just different like tempo variations, or in most cases, just like different time signatures. And that's definitely like interesting to play, but it can also make the music sound very confusing. And like if you're not used to that kind of thing, like I don't know, like if like yeah, it kind of comes down to like, do you really enjoy the technical music?
Yeah.
And I
And
think most musicians, like experienced musicians, will like that sort of thing. But like the average listener will just uh, they will just hear like a maelstrom of just chaos. It's not
and,
always
and
appealing.
and I think that is like a trap it's possible to fall into, is
Yeah.
this thing of like writing really technical things. My last demo tape that I recorded had a song that alternated between 7/4 and 9/4. And I have no idea if anyone else would actually notice that unless they were like a musician themselves.
Exactly. Yeah.
And even then, they probably would just think it sounds weird.
Yeah, yeah. That's like a very common issue, and a lot of comments that I've heard from like just regular listeners have been like, "Oh, it does sound kind of weird," and that's just because we have just so many different influences, so many
Yeah.
technical shit to just show off, and it's really cool to just be like, "Oh, listen to this 9/8 time measure popping up," and it's like, yeah, that's really cool, but like, you know does it yeah, like the average listener is just going to be confused. And but I do still think time signatures and just technicality in general can be used in a positive way, in a way that actually contributes to like the musicality. um Definitely to spice things up, in my opinion.
I agree.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and that can be very important too, just as a like variety thing. But I am ever since Dust of Obscure Devastation, I am a little bit more wary as when it comes to applying it all the time. And there's definitely like a few tracks on that album where I'm like, like a Dead Audience, for example, which most people seem to like, which is good. But like when I listen to that, I'm like, oh. Yeah, that's so many like time signatures and it's changing all the time, and it's like you know, and it also comes down to establishing a song flow, and if you can't easily feel a song out, it can easily feel jarring instead, to like an average for you listener anyway.
Though even then, I think that can be used for artistic effect. Like sometimes you want something to feel jarring
Yeah,
or
definitely. Yeah.
off in some way. Like one song I wrote where the main part was in 7/4. I then had the outro in 13/8, so that it felt like each measure was getting clipped,
Oh
sort
yeah.
of to give it more like a frantic feel.
Do you know the band Igor?
I do, yeah.
Oh, nice. That's also a good example of like that
Yeah.
sort of like variety taken to the extreme.
And yeah, and I think it can be done right, but it's something that you have to do cautiously, I think.
Yes, definitely. I think when it's done tastefully, it just creates like
Yeah.
lots of like. I always compare it to using spices in food. I think that's fairly similar in that regard, because when you apply spices to food, you want to just be just enough to make it to add to the dish, to make it just that more tasty, to like really make it pop. But if a dish is like mostly spices, then it
Yeah.
just feels
Yeah, no one
annoying.
wants to eat a container worth of powdered chili.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So yeah, I always think that's That's a good example. And there's there was this artist, a Dutch artist called About, which disbanded already like a long time ago. And he did an interview in which he said like, what did he say again? He compared his music, which was also very avant-garde, just very very oddball music, you know. And he compared it to eating or drinking a very delicious soup that's just really hot. You know, it's like it's really hot, and you want to drink more of it, but you have to be really cautious because it's really hot. You know, you have to drink it very carefully. You know, and I don't know why, but like this quote has always just stuck with me because it's just. I don't know. I feel like it's very very on point when it comes to variety in music like that. You know, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah, I agree. And so, uh, something else that I would say, as someone who's enjoys listening to metal music, and as someone who is a musician, although not really one that's released anything formally yet.
Well, that's fine.
What I would say as well is that one does have to balance, I guess, what the audience might want to hear and what you want to do as an individual, but also there's the question of like, since in my case at least, I'm not doing this to make money. I'm doing this just because I want to make music. It's like on some level, I feel like that gives me a license of sorts to be as weird as I want to be with it.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely see that. That's definitely a good thing. Although, in my just coming from my perspective, I always think that this is a little bit of a double-edged sword. Just because whenever I write music, I always do it for myself. Obviously, you know, like it's always coming just from a place that is just that is me. And first and foremost, I write what I think would be interesting, you know. But at the same time, you know, if I didn't want other people to hear it, I would simply not bother recording it, you know, like I wouldn't or releasing it for that matter. So at the same time, it's like I would like it if people would listen to it, but the way to accomplish it would be, at least in my experience, obviously, would be best if they were to listen to my music as uncompromising as possible, you know. So like my music, and I feel that's a pretty touchy subject because as a musician you don't want to like sacrifice too much.
Yeah.
But yeah,
And
what if
especially
you?
in metal, where we make like a big deal of, not selling out or of not going to commercial
Oh yeah.
in the scene. And and there's this whole purity culture around that.
Definitely, especially when you get to death metal and black metal. That's
Yeah.
definitely. And honestly, when it comes to those two genres in particular, I tend to gravitate a little bit more towards just the death metal scene, just
Yeah.
because they tend to be a little bit more open-minded, just a little bit more.
Yes,
And there's
yeah,
there's definitely
the reason
bigots in
I
there too, but
yeah, the reason I lean away from black metal is because there's kind of too many Nazis.
yeah, definitely.
And, which I mean, I guess is kind of a result of the fact that the genre was created by. Well, it's unclear how many of them were actually Nazis versus how many were edgy and pretending to be Nazis, but it's also
Yeah.
not really. But if the last few years have taught us anything, there's really not much of a meaningful distinction between someone who does Nazi stuff to be edgy and who actually is a Nazi. There's not that much of a distance between them. And so yeah, as a whole, I tend to lean away from black metal and more towards death metal. And of course, death metal has its problems too.
Yeah,
but but there's fewer Nazis.
I do think the few contacts that I do have, like just talking from the perspective of like the Dutch metal scene, obviously, because I'm from the Netherlands. I do have like I have met like a couple of bands, a couple of guys who were like from definitely from the black metal scene. And they've been like very, very kind and very open-minded.
Well, yeah, I'm not saying everyone in it's a Nazi. I mean, I know people in black metal bands who are not fascists. But I'm just saying there's a few too many for comfort. Like it's a genre where you really have to vet the bands you listen to.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I mean, it's kind of the same as with like pagan metal in general, like pagan and like some folky leaning bands. That it's like it's like especially when I see pagan metal, I'm always like, okay, where's the swastika? I'm always looking for it.
Yep, and it's like, oh no, they have a song about the black sun. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It's like about heritage, and I'm like, oh no, here we go. Yeah.
I'm on a metal Discord server, and we have a whole channel that's devoted to vetting bands. And although it's not exclusive to black metal for that channel, it's the main genre we end up talking about there. Like someone will post like the name of a band, and they're like, "Does anyone know if this band is suspicious or sketchy?" And immediately someone else will post and be like, yeah, actually, the lead singer apparently is a member of the Temple of the Black Light or whatever.
Yeah, and especially I don't know why this is, but especially like Eastern Bloc bands, just like Poland and Russia these days.
Which is interesting, given that Poland you'd think wouldn't like Nazis, given that the Nazis occupied them during the war.
Yeah, you'd think that, but like, I don't know. But I've kind of been doing a little bit of a game like for the past few years on Metal Archives, and it's just like every time I see a Polish metal band, I always look through the band members' history just to see if there's like if they've played in a Nazi band, and like I hate to say it, but like I don't know, 7 times out of 10, there's always like this one member who played in a Nazi band, and it's just
or like you look at their
sad
album art and it's like, well, there's this thing that looks an awful lot like a swastika, but just enough different that they have plausible deniability.
Oh yeah, it's like a swastika, but like with 3 arms instead of 4 or something.
Well, the one with 3 arms might just be the flag of the Isle of Man, but or when you see like some. Or like when you see like one of the track titles happens to be something about purity or about and it's like, step back.
And even something like heritage, like it's definitely a red flag to me anyway. But like I've seen bands who established like very, very firmly, obviously, that they just like to talk about like heritage from like a historical point of view, and it just kind of goes to show that like the subject matter is almost like tainted by a lot of those like far right types.
I find the era of history they're interested in can often be quite telling as well. For instance, if all their songs are about World War II and seem to like depicting the Nazi perspective, that's a pretty big red flag.
Yeah, that's yeah.
And it's like in the United States, outside of metal, of course, we have this, a lot of people like to display the Confederate flag, which obviously is a symbol of the Confederacy, and so many people show it, and they're like, oh, it's heritage, not hate, and it's like, that's a big red flag here, too.
Yeah.
And
quite literally.
And it does bleed into the metal scene, of course. Like, for instance, you have bands like Pantera that, well, I wouldn't say they were Nazis, but they're definitely not a band I would recommend listening to right now. I mean, after it turns out Phil Anselmo is apparently quite racist.
Yeah.
And it's like, it doesn't really surprise me.
No, I mean, that's always the thing with like those types of bands, especially like the really like the bands that are really like masculine, you know.
Yeah.
If it's
yeah.
like super masculine, then you're always like, you know, these thick-headed like guys, they might have like some really toxic ideologies up their sleeve, and it kind of like it kind of reminds me of Iced Earth as well with John Shaver. I'm
Yeah,
pretty
and of
sure you
course,
follow that.
I have, yeah. And of course, now everyone else in the band is quitting because they're trying to distance themselves from him. And one thing I think is important is to, not forget. Like, yeah, they're leaving now, but remember, they originally defended him.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
Like Stu Block, he leaves now, but originally when it happened, he was hiding comments on the Instagram page criticizing it.
Oh yeah, definitely. I don't know. It's quite sad actually, but then again, I guess the writing was on the wall when it came to Iced Earth. At least in like the lyrical
It doesn't
sense.
surprise me, and or it's like not even just necessarily with racism or far right extremism, but even with like more ostensibly like left leaning scenes or bands, you sometimes do get these bigotries combined with the extreme masculinity. Like, for instance, that time Jamie Jasta threatened to kill a gay guy and announced himself as a proud homophobe.
Oh wow.
And granted, that was 30 years ago, but at the same time, I don't think he ever formally apologized.
Yeah, that's that's something that a lot of bigots do, and I've noticed. And not to drag this off topic, but like quite recently, there's been I'm pretty sure you know the Amazing Atheist, no?
I do know who he is, yeah.
Yeah, but he's been. When I say like a while ago, it's probably like a few months ago by now. But he's been like doing, showing up on people's podcasts and all that. He also talked to Vosh, and basically what he's been doing is like he's been basically coming out as like, well, as this really progressive type, But then again, and this is something that I found so frustrating. Like they never address like his past stuff, His past, outings were like grossly,
he's grossly misogynistic in the past.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he never apologized. And then, of course, even more recently, like I think this was just a few weeks ago, he said he was proud to be ableist.
Oh yeah.
And then he changed his
like
screen name to the Amazing Ableist.
Oh yeah, very funny. Like
and it's like
what a barrel of laughs.
And it's like, really, that's why I don't believe him that he's suddenly progressive.
Yeah.
Or at the very least, he's sort of one of those. I've heard them called multiple names, but dirtbag left.
Dirtbag left. Yeah.
Claim to be progressive, but really have a lot of very reactionary social views.
Yeah, I mean, he also said that he wasn't transphobic at all, and he went on record to say like, well, yeah, I think trans women are women and everything. It's all fine and dandy. And it's like, okay, but you made some really, really transphobic videos in the past, like and those videos, like they're still online, still gaining views, still probably monetized.
And it's like,
what happened to that? Like, and he just ignores that, and it's just. Yeah, that's a really, I don't know.
And it's like, I believe people can change.
Yeah,
but I think
do
an important step in changing is acknowledging that you did something wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, making an effort not to do it in the future. That is not claiming to be proudly ableist, apologizing for what you've done wrong. See, I don't buy his whole recovery arc here.
No, me neither. Me neither.
And the same goes for, I'd say, a lot of other people. Like, I think right now, within the world of like left-wing YouTube or BreadTube or whatever we want to call it, there are quite a number of people who are, former alt-right types, and some of
Yeah,
them I think have somewhat have redeemed themselves, but others really never address it and seem to still have a lot of the
yeah.
views that they had then. Like,
I think that's one thing that these people have to do, like as like when they come out as just saying like, well, I regret my far right history or whatever. I regret saying these awful bigoted things. I'm like, yeah, that's and I'm definitely someone who can forgive somebody. I mean, everybody changes. I think that's like a fundamental part of leftism in general, is just accepting accepting somebody's mistakes, and bettering yourself. I think that's a fundamental leftist principle. But
yeah,
at the same time, if they never acknowledge those past mistakes, then the whole redemption becomes meaningless.
yeah, because they never, or if they, keep saying some very similar things to what they said before, and it's like, then they haven't changed. It was all talk.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
and, uh, and it's like, even beyond that, I think there's also a difference between forgiving and forgetting.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
I can forgive someone, if they show that they actually meaningfully have changed, that they no longer believe what they did, that they're no longer doing what they did. But at the same time, I also will probably remember, that they did those things, and that may affect, how I do view them. I also think that forgiveness is kind of an individual thing for the group that they've hurt. Like, for instance, in the
Yeah.
case of someone who's been transphobic, I think there's people have written about this before, but there's these things about uh, there have been these things written about like the burden of forgiveness that's always placed on minorities,
Hmm.
minorities of all kinds, where it's like, oh, so and so didn't mean to be transphobic or
Oh
homophobic or
yeah, yeah.
ableist. You need to forgive them, and it's like, no, I don't. I'll forgive them when I feel like it's good to forgive them. Uh, it's like otherwise it's kind of an abuser tactic. It's like saying,
Yeah.
forgive me, I'm still doing what I did, but forgive me anyway because I deserve forgiveness. And it's like, no, I will forgive people if and when I think they've actually changed and are worthy of forgiveness.
Yeah,
Like, I'm
exactly.
not opposed to forgiving people, but I think they need to do work first to make it
Yeah,
worth it to
exactly.
forgive.
And besides that, it's just I think it's not up to somebody else to 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 assert whether somebody should be forgiven or not.
Yeah, I think it's an individual thing.
It's like when yeah, absolutely. But when like when somebody's being like a racist asshole towards like a person of color, then it's not up to like some white guy to say like, well, it's not really racist, so it's like it's
Yeah,
fine.
it's
It's
like
like,
there's a reason
well,
we
it's
have that
irrelevant.
meme. There's a reason we have that meme that's like, oh, phew, I thought I was experiencing transphobia. Thankfully, I had this cis person tell me I'm not, because that's
Yeah, yeah,
constantly said, and it's like, and it's like that goes, I think, for a lot of these, former alt right types, where like they apologize, to cis people for their transphobia, but then, never actually seek forgiveness from the trans community, and then are like,
yeah,
but you gotta forgive me anyway. And it's like, no, I don't have to forgive. If I'm going to forgive you, you should maybe try doing something that would make me, think that it's time to forgive you. I mean, actions
yeah,
speak louder than words.
yeah. I mean, yeah. If they don't put the effort in to make us think better of them, then yeah,
Then I'm
then
not going to think better. Yeah.
exactly, yeah. But let's try to get this back to music and
Okay.
metal
All
again.
right. All right. We'll circle back to that. Yeah.
Yeah, let's do a little circle back, I guess. Um, let's see. What are your? I guess I'll just say like what are some of your favorite bands?
So I'm really into especially like melodic death metal and
Mm.
melodic like blackened death metal. So I like bands like Amon Amarth a lot, uh,
Uh,
or or Naglfar. Uh,
oh yeah, yeah. I remember
those
that.
are both bands that I like a lot. I'm also into a lot of the more technical things like Nile, Origin,
Oh yeah.
Archspire.
Mm.
And more recently, I've really been getting a lot into some genres that I wasn't into before, like doom metal. I used to not
Oh
really
yeah.
be into doom metal, but I'm kind of getting into it more now that I'm finding some bands I like.
Hmm.
Uh, and uh, and then I also have some sort of guilty pleasure type bands like metalcore things like Architects, Wage War, the kinds of things that normally I would probably get called like a poser if I admitted I liked them, but screw that, I'm going to admit that I like Architects.
Well, the types of people who call others like posers, they, they're probably very insecure themselves. So
Yeah, it is insecurity. It's like they're trying to be like, I am more of a metal person than you,
yeah,
so because I don't like this band or because I do like that other band, and I'm
yeah,
like, really more that shows that you're very persuadable by peer pressure.
yeah.
To be able
I mean,
to be told what bands you can and can't like.
yeah. I mean, by that standard, like, I'm a really big like just musical omnivore, and in that regard, I would be like the biggest like poser probably, just by virtue of just liking a lot of music in general. Um,
Yeah, and it's a really closed-minded viewpoint, and it's not exclusive to metal, but it is kind of prevalent in the metal scene. This viewpoint, or it's like, or meanwhile, there's also that whole thing about, if you don't like, in addition to like, if you do like X band, you're a poser. There's also this whole thing of like, if you don't like this band, then you're faking or something, and it's like, yeah, I'm going
oh
to
yeah,
admit, there are some bands that like a lot of people like that I just don't get. I mean, I'm not
yeah.
saying that they're like bad. I'm just saying I don't get why people like them so much. Like a Lamb of God, for instance. I don't get why people like them so much. I
Yeah,
guess maybe I just can't get into them, but like to me it just seems like their music's kind of repetitive and all the songs kind of sound the same.
yeah.
It's like the, yeah.
I kind of have that with Iron Maiden, honestly. And I
So
know like any like heavy metal fan will just freak out like right about now, but
yeah.
like I've never enjoyed Iron Maiden, and I just like I don't think they're like awful. Absolutely not. Like it's tolerable music, I think, but it's like every song is the same, to me at least. And I know like some Maiden fan is going to be like, well, they can point out all the little differences that they know from each song or whatever. But like to me, if it doesn't matter if I'm listening to one album or the other. Like it all sounds the same to me,
And
like
that's
the
and that's how I
same.
feel about
Yeah.
AC/DC. And I know I'm not the
Oh
only
yeah.
person who feels this way about AC/DC because that kind of thing's always leveled at them. But it's like, yeah, that is how I feel about AC/DC. Is all their songs sound the same. It's like they've got three templates that all the songs
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
based on for like 30 years, and it's like how many songs can you sing about sing about like large women or going to the club or
Yeah. Rock and roll.
rock and roll. Yeah, but like that's honestly the most cliched one is songs
Yeah.
that are about the genre they're
Yeah.
of. Like it happens sometimes in metal, but it's like super prevalent in like hard rock to have like
I
hard
think
rock songs that are about rock, and it's like
I've
that
seen
just gets really boring for me.
yeah, I've seen like a
Or like it
few
also
bands like that. Like I've seen like a few like metal bands that sing about metal. I think like a
mostly
band
power metal.
yeah, or like a band like that's almost like a parody band, like Hell Yeah or something. and it always makes me cringe. It always makes me cringe.
Or it's like this also happens in like hip hop. You get like a lot of songs that are about rapping.
Oh, I don't know anything about hip hop, so
I don't know much about it either. So I'm sure some hip hop fans are going to tell me that like I'm underestimating it, and fair. I mean, I don't know much about hip hop. It's not like the genre that I know that much about. It's not a genre that I'm super into. I don't hate it, but it's just not one that I'm really that interested in.
I've known when it comes to hip hop, I know Snoop Dogg, Tupac.
Most of what I know about hip hop is from growing up in an area where hip hop was very popular and like overhearing it, on the radio or at a friend's house. And it's because all my friends growing up were like really into hip hop. And again, I don't like have anything against it. It's just not a genre of music that I really like that much.
Yeah, personally, and that's kind of this is kind of due to my upbringing, but thanks to just my personal history, I have a bit of a thing against people talking loudly and fast to me. That combination, I don't know. It really aggravates me. I can see why
you wouldn't enjoy hip hop music.
Yeah, so whenever I hear like a hip hop song where it's just really fast, like talking, I'm just like my finger just itches to press the stop button.
And so regarding that, though, I will say there are a few bands that I will admit to liking that do sort of have some hip hop elements, like and again I might get canceled for this,
canceled,
or called a poser or whatever. But like,
cancel culture strikes again.
For instance, I think the first 3 Linkin Park albums are good.
Oh wow!
Like I know that a lot of people are going to disagree with me, but I actually like the first 3 Linkin Park albums.
It doesn't really move me either way. Like,
and that's
they
fine.
have some catchy songs.
I'm not saying anyone else has to. And again, I probably will get canceled for this.
Yes.
So at the end of the episode,
I'm canceling you right now. Like at this very moment, I'm canceling you.
Oh dear! Now I have to go on the speaking circuit and do a redemption arc and end up becoming more famous than I ever was. Yes. I am a martyr for free speech about Linkin Park.
Yes. Like at this moment, I'm like, you're just being canceled, and you have no life anymore. All of your income has been ceased or something.
Yeah, I'll just have to write a book about how canceled I've been and how
yes.
and how how I've fallen and how I'm a martyr of free speech. I just gotta write a book about it now, and that'll fix the problem.
Yeah.
I mean, my thing about cancel culture is I don't think it's really a real thing the way the right claims it is, because pretty much everyone who they cite is like getting canceled, regardless of their point on the political spectrum, comes back with like more prominence than they had. It's like a strategic career move.
Yeah, absolutely. And besides that, it's also but besides that fact, it's also it also goes against their so-called freedom of speech, their freedom of speech to critique anything and anyone,
Yeah,
that seems to be like a really prominent thing about these alt-right figures, and they're like, oh, I'm so pro free speech, and then somebody critiques like their favorite like millionaire, and it's like, oh, our cancel culture strikes again. It's like, what? But do you like critique or not? Like, do you like free speech or what?
Yeah,
like they just don't like free speech.
It's like, I think it was Noah Berlatsky who pointed this out. He's a journalist, but he pointed out that when right-wingers scream for debate, they don't actually want that, because really you're kind of debating them every time, you criticize them. That's in a way a debate, even if it's not being held like face-to-face in front of an audience, and they really don't like that. It's like these are that. It's like they have this very fundamental misunderstanding of free speech where they seem to think it applies to them but not to anyone else. Like that free speech equals freedom from consequences or freedom from criticism, and that's not what it means at all.
Yeah, that's definitely like a misunderstanding. It seems. Yeah, I'm just trying to I'm trying to think of a way to roll this back to music again.
So it's like, to connect it back to music, it's like there are definitely musicians who've been, so-called canceled, but pretty much all of them just got more attention out of it. Like, the guy from Trapped.
Oh yeah. Oh man, that was some drama. Yeah, I remember that.
I never listened to Trap before that, and afterwards I was curious, and their music is terrible.
Yeah. But
seriously.
But the fact is, but the fact remains that they're after, like, before their quote cancellation, you've never heard of him. You've never heard of it before. But after they got quote cancelled, suddenly people have heard about it. Like, it really does sound like a strategic move on their part. Just to make some money out of it.
Yeah, and I think that's the way it is for a lot of them. Yeah,
making money out of an inconvenience to them.
Like I bet their streams went up.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Up after that, and it's like, because I checked out a few of their songs after and found their songs are terrible and will never listen again. But it's like that probably did drive up engagement. Which is, of course, what they thrive on, because we live in a culture that's very much about getting clicks, getting engagement, getting likes. And if you say something controversial, you're kind of guaranteed, and you get quote unquote canceled, you're kind of guaranteed to get that. Like,
absolutely.
You're guaranteed, you're guaranteed to get people, hate watching you or hate following. And two, you're guaranteed to get engagement of people criticizing you, because, any publicity is good publicity, and you get a free new right-wing audience who probably hasn't heard of you before, but is all of a sudden going to be, super into you because something free speech.
Yeah, it's not a coincidence that after the whole J.K. Rowling coming out as a transphobe debacle, that suddenly she got a lot more media attention out of it. Yeah. Every magazine after magazine was writing articles about her suddenly. Just about just about like a couple of transphobic tweets. Like it's
got
definitely
like a brand new audience.
That's
now there's all these quote unquote gender critical British people who are and of course in other countries too, but like especially in the UK, who are now super into this random children's book author. And are like, we love J.K. Rowling. And there's a video about that.
You asked them like, how many books have you read? About
and they're like,
how many J.K. Rowling? Like it's just something they get on because they hate trans people. They hate trans people, therefore I like her.
Yeah, and because they get a new martyr.
Yeah.
And of course, the right survives on like martyrdom and their persecution complex.
Mm-hmm.
And going back to metal, I think that really is true for a lot of fans of these bands too. Like that get canceled. Like, for instance, I think that, probably half the new fans Trapped got were probably random right-wingers who ordered their album to own the libs.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's like, congratulations, you ordered a really bad album that you're never going to listen to because you think that the left is going to care. And it's like, no, people on the left don't care.
And remember Ion Fury?
I don't recall that one. Can you remind me more about it?
Basically, it's a video game, and they've had like just after the release of that game, they've had like a bunch of Discord leaks where the creators of that game just went on like a few transphobic and homophobic rants, basically. And so this was leaked, and it was also discovered that they included like a bunch of like really just off-color homophobic gags into the game. So basically, they received backlash for it. Which is obvious when something like that comes to light. And when you went to like the Steam store page and looked at the reviews, it was like flooded by right wingers, which was like all instigated through Reddit and 4chan and all these websites where they basically just hate purchased the game just because they received the game creators received criticism from leftists.
Yeah, and meanwhile, the right has like its own thing where they cancel people that's like way more extreme and really in a lot of ways not particularly well thought out. Where like they buy something then destroy it. Like you remember when they like made those videos of like flushing razors down the toilet after Gillette made the ad about toxic masculinity, or when they or that time they bought Keurig machines to smash them.
Or like the Nike thing.
Yeah, when they set their shoes on fire while wearing them. Or when they, or like to go back a little further, around like 2004 or so, when they burned Dixie Chicks CDs after the Dixie Chicks came out, like against the war in Iraq.
I don't remember that one, but
that would have been like a more U.S. centric thing.
Probably. Yeah.
Thing, and that was a while ago too. And or like. For a somewhat more topical example, all of the like right-wing Christian groups that burned Harry Potter books because they thought they were like satanic or promoting witchcraft.
Oh yeah.
And meanwhile, those same people are now, big fans of J.K. Rowling.
Yeah. Yeah. It all depends. Yeah. It's so context sensitive to these people. Like one moment they think it's bad, it's the devil's work, especially since the J.K. Rowling books were just really popular among like a certain set of millennials,
Yeah.
Basically. And then suddenly it's like now it's just weaponized by boomers. Just stick it to those same millennials,
Yeah, it's
basically.
Like those millennials won't accept that the author of their favorite book series when they were kids is a bigot, so I have to buy all the books now. I'll never read them, but I have to buy them.
Yeah, the same books I said totally sucked.
And that I said were satanic and burned.
Yes.
Now I have to buy another copy.
Yeah.
And it's like, and it's like to give... Or it's like to give another kind of right-wing cancel culture. You remember how like when that Marvel movie came out, I forget which one because I don't really follow Marvel stuff, came out with like a woman lead character, how they all like pre-bombed it with negative reviews.
Yeah, the Captain Marvel
before
movie.
It even came out. And it's like, is that not, an attempt to cancel something, which really didn't work, given that that I think that movie went on to be like one of the best-selling movies in film history.
Yeah.
But I might be mixing it up with Avengers Endgame, but they didn't like that one either.
No, either way.
It's because they tried to bomb that one at the on Rotten Tomatoes, and it ended up, and instead it ended up becoming like the highest-grossing film ever made.
Yeah, that Endgame definitely. But I think that just goes to show how, like I said, how context sensitive it is. Like it really depends on the narrative they have. If their narrative is is that like this person has said something, in which they care, they express empathy towards like a minority group or whatever, then suddenly that's the right context for them to absolutely lambast this product just to own it to the lips, But
Yeah.
yeah,
And to tie this back to metal, it reminds me of that time Gamergate tried and failed to latch on to metal. When like a bunch of Gamergaters from outside the metal scene decided to start Metalgate over something, but it was just so very obvious that they didn't know what they were talking about. Like, one of them said that Cattle Decapitation was a new band, and it's like, that's news to the band who's been around since the 90s. Or where they tried to claim, or where they couldn't name the members of Slayer and said that Kerry King was the lead singer. And so the whole thing basically fell apart, thankfully. But I mean, it's like, these are grifters. They don't actually care about these things. They're just looking for a way to make money to boost their profile temporarily.
It's just riding the wind of a new news story.
Yeah, it's like they just keep, hopping on whatever they think's going to go up and, up and try to raise their profile. And often it kind of does work temporarily. But then, what I think, and I think this is especially the case for a lot of these, right-wing grifters now, is the minute that, the right no longer has a use for them, and I think this is especially a thing for, a lot of the, folks who are from groups that normally the right hates, they seem to not realize that, the minute they're no longer useful, they're going to be thrown under the bus. You look at, Milo
Absolutely.
Yiannopoulos, for instance. He's now, $2 million in debt. He's never going to be able to hold a job again because of his name.
Yeah.
And he's, rambling to rambling on Telegram because he's been banned everywhere else about... about, all the same things he used to ramble about, because they no longer have a use for him. It's like none of them care.
I mentioned on Kevin Logan's podcast or stream that Milo, or I think BleepFox mentioned it, how Milo tried to get a booth at a FurryCon.
Oh, I remember that.
Out of desperation, because he was just so running low on when
he tried to crash Midwest Fur Fest.
And it completely failed, and he even went as far as to create his own fursona, to commission his own persona.
He bought a fursuit.
And it was this really smug, even as like BleepFox pointed out that back then, even his persona looked like an asshole, and it was just so transparent, and the con organizers just immediately just banned him, which was just awesome to see.
Honestly, on some level, I wish he'd shown up though, so we could have watched him get totally owned by a bunch of other fursuiters.
I don't know.
So we could know what it looks like when a snow leopard fights a fox or whatever. I think that's what he was, a snow leopard.
Yeah, I think it was it was some kind of cat. That's all I remember.
I think he was a snow leopard, but I don't remember.
But I just know, and as much as I agree with that, I do think it's better to just outright ban them, because as much as it pains me to say, these right-wing grifters, especially somebody like Milo, his whole spiel was just to be the outrageous person,
Yeah. And that's been his grift from the beginning, when he wrote that book that I don't think ever got published, but someone leaked the publisher's annotated version, and every page was crossed out and had all these remarks about please remove this ethnic joke, please no, please remove this slur, and it's if you did all of that, you probably would have 5 pages tops.
Yeah, that's about that seems about right, I think, with everything that comes from him. I think 5 pages worth of content, it's probably still too much, but
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's like I agree that they made the right choice to ban him, definitely. Yeah, because here's the thing: is if they invited him, even if he got like totally got his ass kicked, he still would have gotten a platform out of it. He still would have
Exactly.
gotten the attention he craves.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't think that people should publicly debate their enemies, because I don't think that is how. Or I mean, if it's over like trivial things, maybe you can debate your enemies, like whether it's like when it's over which ice cream flavor's best, or whether to go to the beach or to the mountains. But it's like the thing is, I think debate is not what the alt-right thinks it is, because here's the thing about debate is I think when you agree to debate someone in a public forum, whether that's in person or on a stream or whatever, you're giving them that legitimacy. You're giving them a platform.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Like you've given a fascist or an anti-vaxxer a platform. So even if you totally demolish them in debate, well, one, people are going to see just that you debated, and they're going to think, oh, these two viewpoints are equal. And you're giving them, the ability to spread their views to more people. And
Yeah, but the fact is also that, like, even if you pick all of his arguments apart, which is pretty easy to do. Like, if you have like at least 3 brain cells, like I think most of us over here at least do. I think it's pretty easy to just pick apart like everything he says, but that's not his goal. His goal is like to reach out and to he is a populist first and foremost.
And I think his arguments are
that's
really
dangerous.
Yeah, it is dangerous, and I think his arguments really are about quantity over quality. Because it's a gish gallop. It's when you throw out so many bad arguments that your opponent could break down each one but doesn't have time to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like Ben Shapiro's kind of famous for this, and it means it gives the impression you're winning, and it makes people who don't know what they're seeing think, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about. He's, destroying the left with facts and logic.
Yeah.
And really it's like, no, he's just spouting gibberish.
Yeah, you should never be on the defending end when it comes to like arguing with fascists or right wingers for that matter. You should never be on the defending end, because what you do then is, and you see this a lot on Twitter, and even with people who argue against like quote gender critical folks, and they end up replying with like over five tweets, just picking apart like every little word. And it's like, and I get it, obviously. I think they're doing like a pretty good job dissecting like every little bit, but like the common audience isn't going to see that. What they're going to see is just a person who's writing this long diatribe in response to one to like a single sentence quip,
Yeah, it's like I make some shit post about like a joke or something, and they're like, actually no, because something gametes.
Yeah,
Something like that.
It really comes down to it comes down to like a public perception, as much as I hate to say it, because I definitely prefer just I prefer just more substance to in these types of arguments, but that's not what social conservatives are going for. That's not what they like. It's funny because oh, sorry.
Go on.
I was gonna bring this around to when I first joined the metal community. People who've been listening to me ramble before probably know that I'm a fair bit old. And so when I grew up, when I decided to like really get into metal, not just the music, but also like the community, to go into like the forums, and the forums were like a relatively new thing at the time. I'm talking about like 2000 ish, and this was like something completely new. So when I registered to like a Dutch metal forum, I was completely blown away by just how homophobic it is, and just by how toxic it is, in general. Like, and thankfully, this is just starting to change just a little bit. Also, in regards to just LGBT stuff in general. But back then, the perception was just really, really bad.
And that's one of the reasons I kind of stayed out of engaging with those things for so long, is because I didn't want to deal with, the misogyny, the homophobia, the
Yeah.
transphobia, the other stuff, because I just didn't want to. And what that ended up meaning a lot of the time was that I kind of did stay out of that, and it's only been more recently that I've been engaging with the community, because I've been able to find like the sort of niche areas of it. People who are
Yeah.
like progressive, who are like metal fans, who are also like progressive and leftist, and a lot of I've been able to find like queer metal fans. Like, for instance, one of my main sources of interaction now is there's this Discord I'm in that's well, technically it's open to people of all genders and sexualities, but it's like for like left-wing metal fans, and is mostly geared towards like LGBT metal fans.
Yeah. I mean, I remember just, I don't know, even within the metal community itself, when somebody came out as like gay, I remember the whole Judas Priest thing.
Yep.
Yeah, of Rob Halford coming out as gay. That was, like just the word gay itself was just, that was just an everyday slur in the metal community. And I'm not joking when I say that. It was really just
I know.
if somebody did something that was considered silly or bad or just,
Yeah, it was an insult
if
at
it
my
was
high
just
school as
gay.
well. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it was just commonplace in these like super masculine communities, at least at the time. And yeah, I remember. I'm not sure if you're like how much you know about like black metal, but remember the band Gorgoroth?
Oh yes, yes, and Gal, yeah.
Yeah, and Gal. So when he came out as gay, that was also like a really big thing. And I still remember thinking to myself like, wow, that's actually pretty like impressive, from the and just in regards of
Yeah.
like the most toxic community you can think of, like the most hateful community you can think of, at least at the time. I haven't really like engaged that much with like the black metal community lately, but
Yes,
like
same. I haven't either.
yeah, but like just to come out like that as gay, I don't know. I thought it was pretty badass. So definitely, you know, you, at the time at least, I hoped it would set like a right example, just to kind of diffuse the hatred in that community just a little bit. But that's probably wishful thinking on my part.
And something that's been really heartening to me in recent years is seeing, a lot of people in various metal bands come out as trans or non-binary. And that's been really heartening for me, because although, yes, there definitely is backlash, sometimes, a lot of the time, there's also been, a fair degree of like acceptance from fans. And
Yeah.
like, for instance, recently, you may recall Hunter Hunt Hendricks from Liturgy.
Ooh, I don't think I remember that.
Liturgy is a black metal, sort of avant-garde black metal type
Oh.
band, and she came out as a trans woman a few months back, And overwhelmingly, the response I've seen has been fairly positive. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
sure there are, people out there who are very transphobic towards her, but most of the response I've observed, and again, this could be, based on the selection bias of I don't tend to associate with bigots,
Yeah.
but most of the response I've seen has been fairly
Yeah.
positive to her coming out. And
Yeah.
I've really gotten to know a lot more about trans people in the metal scene, which of course, when I first was figuring out that I was trans, I thought like that I couldn't be trans because I was into this music that everyone
Yeah.
said was like so masculine, and I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
but
Definitely.
why do you keep saying it's masculine? It's music. It's
Yeah.
music. It doesn't have a gender.
I definitely had like similar thoughts to that when when I knew I was just queer and just and trans. I thought very similarly. I thought like, like how could it be like how I'm just into this. I've always been into this heavy music, like, and it really takes it takes some time to just really get back around to the point of like music is just music,
Yeah, music
and
doesn't have a gender.
absolutely, but like it's yeah, it's a sort of like it's sort of like an internalized sort of, I don't know, internalized transphobia maybe, or
Yeah, yeah,
I think
it's
that's
something internalized.
yeah.
And I think it also has to do with the fact that cis society, coerces trans people to conform to gender stereotypes in order to get recognition. And of course,
Yeah.
that ends, but of course, because, it has to be a no win situation, it has to be that, if you conform to stereotypes, then, you're reinforcing sexist stereotypes. But, if you don't,
Oh yeah.
then you're, doing something else bad, like you're not trying hard enough or something, or you're not really trans, and it's like there's no way to win. So
No, there really isn't. But I don't know. I've never really understood the sexist stereotypes thing. I don't know. Well, I understand it obviously, but I always think um I'm always of the opinion that if somebody is trans, then how can they I think the marginalization of just being trans in and of itself is profoundly more negative than any sort of perceived um, sexual stereotypes or gender stereotypes can be. But
and
but but that's basically what I think.
the other thing that I think's really been heartening to see, in addition to seeing more trans metal musicians who are open, is seeing more women in general get involved in the scene, and being in these bands like, for instance, Venom Prison. Uh,
Hmm.
like I don't know if you know them, but they're a death metal band from Wales that, in my opinion, is really good.
Hmm.
Like they released what, in my opinion, was the best album of 2019, and just I really like seeing that because uh, it's long been like a really male-dominated scene, and I want
Yeah,
that to
absolutely.
change because
Yeah.
again, I think music doesn't have a gender.
Hmm. Yeah, same. And definitely that's something that I think already is changing.
Yeah.
Like as I said earlier, the way the scene was looking when I first joined it, which was like 2000 ish. It really was a shithole. Really was just
Mm-hmm.
really toxic masculine shithole. And as bad as it still is, I do think that has changed quite drastically. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember just looking at like a bunch of topics on the Metal Archives forums back when I was still lurking there, just quite a bit. I remember what is the band called again? I forgot the name. something something of agony.
Life of Agony.
Life of Agony, yeah. The singer of that band.
Yeah, Mina Caputo. Yeah.
Yeah, when she came out as trans, I remember that was also a pretty big deal. And so I was kind of like lurking on the Meta Archives forums just to see like oh boy, how is this gonna go down? Because I knew that Life of Agony was like a fairly popular band. Like that's not super like popular, but popular enough. And so I was kind of lurking a little bit, and I was actually really surprised by the reception of that news. And like I was actually really surprised that like the overwhelming majority of the replies I could find on the board at that time were all very positive and very accepting. And I remember being genuinely surprised, just because I was really expecting it to just be different. I was expecting it to just be like a complete shit show, basically a complete negative, like the usual transphobic hysteria. But I was really surprised to see that this was different, and I think for me that kind of marked. This marked a different time, I guess. This for me highlighted, just the changing of the tide a little bit, where it wasn't the worst thing to do anymore, coming out as LGBT and just as trans, it was also respected. That's another thing. Like, I don't think. I've seen anyone dead name her again on the board, or like misgender her. I don't know. Yeah, I was just I was just really surprised about that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Pleasantly
that would be
so.
a surprise. Yeah, the thing about Mina Caputo, of course, is since she was like the first prominent metal person to come out as trans, of course, that means I think that a lot of cis people see her as like the representative of trans people in metal, which
Oh yeah.
which really isn't the case. It's like I guess you could call it maybe the Caitlyn Jenner effect.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Caitlyn
the
Jenner
same
was
thing.
like a
Yeah.
high-profile person who came out as trans, and all of a sudden, and to this day, I think a lot of cis people think she's like a representative of the community, and that leads them one to believe that all trans people are like wealthy and white, but
Yeah.
also there's the fact that she's like super conservative, or at least Caitlyn
Yeah.
Jenner is. I don't know Mina Caputo's political stance, but I think she is conservative because I know at the beginning of the pandemic she said that she thinks chemtrails are real and that COVID is
really?
manufactured.
Oh no.
Yeah, unfortunately, she did say at the start of the pandemic that it was like a manufactured crisis,
no.
and that she thinks chemtrails are real. So do with that what you will. I mean, I've never been a huge fan of Life of Agony, but
Yeah, me neither.
yeah, it's less than, it's just not really the style of music that I would enjoy.
But oh man, that's rough.
Yeah, it is unfortunate. As far as I know, Hunter Hendricks, who is probably like the next, like the most prominent trans person in metal right now, since she just came out not that long ago and was kind of a rising star before that. As far as I know, she does not believe in any weird conspiracy theories, so there's that.
Good. She can be the new trans queen of metal then. the trans empress of metal. No, just joking.
Of course. I mean, as far as I know, the only thing about her is that for some reason all of her music has to be super pretentious, which may or may not be an issue depending on a lot of factors.
It's like the contra of
what I mean is like if you read like her things that she's written about her albums, they're all like extremely pretentious.
Oh no. Oh, it depends. If it's to your taste,
that's not necessarily a bad thing. Again,
no. It's just, I mean, it is something that kind of puts me off. That's also a reason, besides all the other reasons, why I don't really care much about Contra. Because
yeah,
a lot of
yeah. Yeah, that actually is a decent comparison between the two. I mean, my issue with Contra is not so much the theatrical side, so much as that she ends up, I guess, again, the same effect, sort of not so much what she is, but what cis people perceive her to be.
Yeah,
Like
I
how
think I
people
could see that.
perceive her as like some sort of representative of the trans community, and how cis people, might watch her videos and think, okay, this is what trans people are like. This is what they think. This is
Yeah,
how I
yeah.
will. And I think that it's not so much what she is, so much as what she's seen to be. I mean, she definitely has done some very problematic things, like
Hmm.
her whole thing with Buck Angel, her
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
and
I
so
think.
yeah, that's I guess my problem. I'm not saying she's like horrible. I'm just saying that she does have some things that I wish she hadn't done, and that are
Yeah.
definitely not really good things, like her whole transmedicalism thing,
Yeah.
and that time that she bullied an autistic trans woman.
I think her entire community is pretty toxic by itself.
Yes,
But
her fans. Yeah,
yeah,
her
the
fans
stands.
definitely can be
Yeah.
toxic, and I think that's true for a lot of these popular YouTubers.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
if you criticize like one that I'm not even gonna name because otherwise the fans will come after me, but whose last name is a type of box that goes in the ground.
Oh.
You know who I'm talking about, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
if you so much as criticize that, or sorry, I think I just used the wrong pronoun. If you so much as criticize them, apologies, then all their fans will come after you.
Well, for me, class reductionists all go into the bin. So
Yep, yeah,
this.
and class reductionism is pretty terrible, and that's also why
Yeah.
I'm like not a fan of a certain other one who, again, I won't name, but
Yes.
whose name starts with the same letter as Violet.
Hmm. Yes.
Uh, yeah, I don't like him either. Although that's also because of that time he went on a rant about how trans people are poisonous or whatever.
Oh no.
Yeah, he had this 4 hour long stream where he went on a rant while talking to a trans person about how she was a cancer to the left, and then he deleted the stream. But now what that means is that if you mention that point, all the fans will scream at you about context. Like the Jordan Peterson fans.
Oh no.
There's really no
Ugh.
context that makes that better. I've not watched the
No.
stream, but I know someone who did, and what they said basically was that the context, if anything, makes it worse.
Ugh. Ugh. Trash people.
Yeah. And this is why and this is a problem I find with a lot of people on the left, who have left wing, economic views, but often have very reactionary views on everything else, or are, at best moderates on like social
Hmm.
things.
Yeah.
Because it's like it's like a common criticism that's leveled at like a lot of liberals is that they're too fiscally conservative even while being somewhat socially progressive. And I think the left, in a lot of ways, a lot of mainstream leftists have kind of the opposite problem in a way, where they're very fiscally progressive, but really not socially progressive. And I think to truly be progressive in either of those, you kind of have to be progressive on both, really.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's like, for instance, I think it's impossible to get rid of say systematic misogyny without addressing things like the pay gap or the issue of maternity leave.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's
Or meanwhile, I think it's also impossible to eliminate economic inequality without, dealing with things like racism.
yeah. That's why intersectionality is just so
Yeah,
important.
yeah, and
And
unfortunately, I think a lot of the left fails at that.
yeah. Yeah. Definitely. And it's kind of similar to when like a tanky guy approaches you and they go like, "Well, I'm on the left," and I'm just like, "No, no, you go in the bin."
Yeah, and it's like yeah, or when you get like someone who's and I find this is also a problem with a lot of these people who are former far right types who claim to be leftists now.
Yeah.
is that they often go straight into class reductionism, and I think it's because that lets them, get, leftist cookie points, I guess, but without actually having to address, that they still hold like very reactionary social views.
Yeah.
And you see this a lot with people like the one who starts with the letter X, where he still uses tons of slurs. He still uses a lot of like the same language as the alt-right. And when you hear terms thrown around like woke scold, I hate that term for so many reasons.
Yeah.
One, because pretty much every pejorative use of the word woke is racist in nature, because the word itself is originally from African American vernacular English. But also because the word scold, of course, has a very misogynistic history. But it's like, even aside from that, it's like these are people who are then trying to convert more from the alt-right, but what they're telling them, instead of telling them, how to be leftists, is they're telling them this is how to sound somewhat like a leftist while still holding like neo-Nazi views on various minorities. And it's like, no, you are not a leftist if you believe that there's some sort of conspiracy being run by Jews to make people gay. You are not a leftist if you believe that that there's a Jewish space laser that makes people gay, or whatever they believe these days. And it's like, what they're doing when they market to those kinds of people and tell them you can be a leftist if you pick up these economic talking points is they're not expanding the left. They're or making the left bigger. They're just making the left more hospitable to fascists and less hospitable to the minorities that make up kind of a key part of it.
Yeah. If anything, that sort of ideology leans closer to like neoliberalism. Than
leftism. And I guess this is, in a way, the extreme of neoliberalism is Nosbolism.
Oh yeah.
It bends towards Nosbolism, and so no, you're not getting leftists. You're getting national Bolshevists, and that really is not good. It's like a metaphor I've used before. Is that it's like pissing in a bucket. You're not getting more water in your bucket. You're just contaminating the water you have.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a very elegant way of putting it.
And I think that's what's happening.
I do agree. Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't have said it any better. But just out of interest, do you have any interest of joining any bands in the near future?
Potentially, if I can find any in my sort of area that would be that would really need someone of my skill set. I mean, I'm primarily a guitarist. I can also play bass, although I'm not as good at it. I am not a vocalist. I mean, I've done vocals for like my solo demos, but I'm not good at it. So in the future, I could potentially see myself joining some bands. I've briefly been in a few in the past, although none of them lasted long. So yeah, if I found musicians sort of in my general area who wanted to form a band, or some bands that needed a new guitarist and who I could get along with potentially, but also I think I'd have to wait for the pandemic to be over, because I don't really feel safe rehearsing with other people during a pandemic.
My band is also just on its ass right now due to the pandemic.
And of course, rehearsing online is pretty much impossible due to latency.
Yeah, that's not happening.
And so the only way I could see really that it could work is if like the band members were able to form some sort of bubble, which might be possible if you're Metallica. I know they floated that possibility, but I'm not sure if they did it. But it's not possible for people like you or I, where we have things we have to do. We have jobs and stuff.
Yeah.
We can't just hire,
us common folks.
we can't just go and hire someone to do all of the grocery shopping and things that require leaving the house and quarantine with our bands. We can't do that.
Any particular like genre of metal you would like go towards when it comes to like forming a band?
The music I enjoy the most is like death metal, melodeath, So yeah, if I was seeking a band,
The Swedish variety.
post-pandemic, yeah, I'd probably be looking for like either straight up death metal or melodic death metal. I don't think I'm necessarily good enough to play most technical death metal. I mean, I like to think I'm getting better every day, just a little bit, but I don't think I'm good enough to play like Origin type stuff.
Oh yeah, oh that's fair. That's quite a comparison too, to be fair. So
I mean, I've in the past sort of been able to play some of their things, but not well. Look, the sweep picked arpeggios at 200 beats per minute kind of get me.
sweep picking is just. I've never been good at sweep picking.
It looks really cool, but it's like not necessarily. But it's just really hard.
And that's the other thing is like how practical is it? Like if it's
really
like
isn't.
Yeah, if it's like really essential to your music to sweep pick, like if it's not, then just cut it out. It's not like it's not going to break your music.
like tapping has the same thing to it. I mean, tapping's easier in my opinion. Tapping's easier to do some of, but harder to like get it to sound good, like to be loud enough.
I think tapping is a bit of a gimmick that it's when you first start out, it's a bit more of a gimmick, so it takes a lot of time to do well, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things that gets abused. Both sweep picking and tapping, get abused, and it's way too easy to get into like this thing of like instead of having a solo that suits the song, you instead get like these really, I guess, wanky sort of things where it's like instead of solo that fits with the song, it's look how many notes I can play fast, and it's like and I know it's like that's why I don't enjoy like a lot of the. It's one of the reasons I don't really like a lot of like hair metal is because it has too much of like that showing off factor.
The shred,
where where they're like, look how many notes I can play in this many seconds, and it's like, great,
to be fair, I can't play like solos worth shit. So I'm mostly just as a rhythm guitarist. Well, if you've listened to Dust of Obscure Devastation, you've probably like noticed that because it has a few leads on there, but it's very few far in between.
And of course that's fine. I mean, but the thing is, I just feel like if you're going to have a solo, the solo should suit the song.
Yeah, absolutely.
It shouldn't be like one of you. It shouldn't be like the thing that. What I mean is, it shouldn't be like a show-off piece. It's like minimalist solos can be really effective. Like
it should serve the music.
Like for instance, one artist that I think does pretty well in terms of having solos that fit the song is I think in general that most Amon Amarth solos fit the song pretty well. Like most of them aren't that technically difficult to play. There's the exception, like for instance the solo in Twilight of the Thunder God, which I think is a guest solo anyway. That one is showing off. But other than that one, most of them I think fit the song pretty well. They're not like too technically difficult to play.
Yeah, that's how it should be, in my opinion.
And it's like it's not showing off too much. They don't use like sweep picking. They don't really use tapping much. There are a few that use tapping, I think. Like War of the Gods, I think, has tapping in the solo. But it's like I think the solo should suit the song. And that's why, for instance, and it's like, look, I like Slayer's songs, but it's for reasons other than the solos. I really don't enjoy the solos so much when it comes to Slayer. And I think that's a common viewpoint.
I don't like Slayer at all. There's my hot take for today.
For me, it's like I like Slayer, but I don't particularly enjoy the solos. Like I saw Slayer live, and that was a great experience. I'm glad I was able to do that before they broke up. Yeah, I saw them when they were touring North America on the first part of their farewell tour in 2019.
I saw them. Sorry.
Yeah, I saw them with Amon Amarth, Cannibal Corpse, and Lamb of God. That was a good show. Again, even though I can't get into Lamb of God, I really did enjoy seeing, Amon Amarth and Cannibal Corpse and Slayer. So it was a good show.
I saw a Slayer in 2006 in Belgium, and it sucked. It sucked. I thought it was so bad, and I felt really bad for like this. Everybody says like,
Well, that would
well,
have
they
been when they were
probably had an
touring
off day.
for. Well, that would have been when they were touring for World Painted Blood, right? That was the album that had come out that year, I think. Or
I
wait,
don't
that might
know.
have been 2009. They had some
No,
really bad
2006.
albums out around that time.
Yeah.
The way I see it is
It's just-
Slayer is one thing Slayer and Metallica have in common is their first few albums, in my opinion, are decent. Then after that, it went straight downhill.
Yeah, I think that's the common consensus. But
like Slayer, I like the first 5 Slayer albums. I don't really like anything that came after.
Well, I think everybody who watched that particular show, was at a festival. I think everybody would admit that it was a bad show. It was a bad performance, unless they're like really big like Slayer fans, and they just wouldn't admit to that. But I think it was objectively bad, and I felt this really bad because like the day before, I remember like there were entire groups of Slayer fans who came there just to see Slayer, you know? Like entire groups, you could see them just walking around in like Slayer shirts, and then we'd be like, "Oh man, I can't wait to see Slayer, man! It's gonna be better." And
Fucking Slayer!
and they played for like 20 minutes, I believe. Played like just the most popular songs and literally nothing else.
Oh,
They played it really, really sloppily.
that sounds
And,
disappointing.
yeah, and then they just fucked off, and that's it. Like, and like I said, there was like a massive audience of Slayer fans, and they were all screaming for like an encore, you know, like encore, encore, and like nothing. They just left and was just gone.
And
Not
it's
even like an
like-
encore for like their really shitty show. But everybody says it was a fluke. It's like, oh, they just had a bad day. Maybe that did. I'm willing to believe that, but yeah, that particular night, that's like the only memory I have of Slayer. Is just that really bad performance, which is it's a bit sad, I guess. But yeah,
Yeah, when I saw them, I enjoyed the performance quite a lot, actually. But also, that was a bit different because they were the headliners of that tour, and so they played like a really big set,
Yeah.
and they had tons of visual effects. Like they had this. Like they had all the fire behind them. They had this flaming inverted cross shape that would like appear in time with the music.
yeah. I guess that does help with like the performance side of things. If just all the attributes are and miscellaneous stuff is just on point, that helps.
Yeah, that definitely makes a difference. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, it is. Although I will say, it is definitely possible to have a good show without any of that. Like, I saw Cannibal Corpse the same day earlier in the show, and and it's like they didn't have any of that. They just had this backdrop that said Cannibal Corpse on it, and still, it was an amazing show. Like, like just the energy was amazing. And maybe it's just that I really like Cannibal Corpse, but I think it's also that that they're just musicians who know what they're doing, and who can
absolutely.
put on a good show. And of course, it's always entertaining to watch Corpse Grinder.
Yeah, it's basically the Corpse Grinder band at this point.
That's not necessarily a bad thing, though. I mean, he's pretty entertaining.
It's still entertaining, but
I just thought it was pretty funny to watch him like windmilling to all these songs, and of course he's got a massive neck.
Yes. Did you like that one Igor song where he did guest vocals?
I did, yeah. I think he actually, I think that actually worked out pretty well.
Yeah,
where
that's
he did
pretty
the guest
interesting.
vocals. It was not what I would have expected from them, but
Yeah.
I think it worked.
Are you okay if we wrap things up from here?
Sure, we can wrap things up.
'Cause, I don't know. I think we covered like a lot of stuff just now in just an hour and a half.
Yeah, it's a little shorter than the usual podcast length, but yeah, we can wrap things up. So anyway, thank you for talking to me about metal.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I
and
think this is definitely a topic we could always revisit. You know.
yeah, we
I
could,
think,
and we could talk about other kinds of music too.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel, like I said, I feel we've covered like a decent amount of topics, not just related to just metal, but also related to like the community itself and just perceptions of queerness and LGBT matters, relating to music in general, which I think makes for like an interesting topic. Yeah, I definitely think this can be revisited. Maybe like for just different types of music. I know I also listen to a lot of like electronic music.
Now, I don't know as much about electronic music, but I could probably learn about it. Or you might be better off talking to BleepFox about that one.
Oh yeah, of course. Well, it's in the name, huh?
'Cause, I mean, that's kind of her
Bleep.
thing. I also think that if I recall correctly, Anthony is really into that. So
Oh yeah, I think so.
so they might want to talk to you about it. But anyway, so thank you. And for the audience, I am DJCthuhlu at Real DJCthuhlu on Twitter. And direct to me all of your hot takes about how I don't appreciate Lamb of God enough, or how I shouldn't like Linkin Park,
Yeah,
or whatever.
and please leave any comments about how I'm an uncultured pleb who for not liking Iron Maiden and Slayer. But all right, this will do it for this episode of Critcast. If you've enjoyed this, please give it a like, and you can find me over on Twitter at TheWolfSpirit1. And I'm also streaming on Twitch every day. You can find me there over at twitch.tv/Rachel Plays Stuff. Just one word. And I thank you very much for listening, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Bye.